Alright, very, very wet day, a lot of rain. It's February of 2023, and what I'm going to do right now is explore what I call Yorkfield Creek. As a historian, I'm interested in the lost creeks and swamps of Elmhurst, Illinois, and I thought we could start at the bottom of the hill. I'm on Roosevelt Road heading westbound. I'm about to jump up onto York, and this is the low point for this general area. In fact, Roosevelt Road's nothing more than a giant peat bog. So we start coming uphill here. This is all artificial with the ramps, and it is the historic center of York Township. Behind me is where one of the pioneer homes used to be. Alright, getting back to Yorkfield Creek. If you've ever come up York Road, near the hospital, near the Center for Health, have you ever noticed this low spot here? Right about where this traffic signal is with the green lights? That's where Yorkfield Creek used to cross York Street in the old days. Let's go take a look at the top of the hill now. So we're still going north on York. This is Lexington. And okay, we caught the green, that's good. Alright, York and Butterfield. Butterfield was actually a stagecoach road at one time. I think you saw the hill there. When we come up Van Buren here, I think you'll be able to see more of the hill. Elmhurst tends to go uphill further north there. There is a low spot where Southside Creek comes across York, right near the Illinois Central Railroad tracks, right near Cayuga. Alright, so we're coming up to the top of the hill, and the headwaters of the creek are up here. This is Chatham Street. Municipal license plates ahead of me. Alright, so this is the interesting part. You really can't see anything, but if you went up the theoretical alley there, about halfway up the block, long-time residents, old-time residents, people have been there back in the 50s and stuff, they talked about wet backyards. And they would have a drainage that they noticed would go downhill here, and the drainage went downhill between Colfax and Chatham. I'll show you where it comes out on the Butterfield. Okay, now we got another municipal plate. What is this, the day for municipal plates to go around the block? But I digress. Alright. So over here, that's where it comes out. I'm going to go up to the park for a second. Alright, this is looking due south. This is the top of the hill for the most part. Hillcrest is a couple hundred feet down, Butterfield that way, and that's the technical 706 feet above sea level top spot. What's interesting about Butterfield Hill, it is rather large, and you can kind of see the descent here. However, this is a man-made descent. You see this ridge here? A little bit of a hill, and it goes on down there behind the ball field stuff. Well, I talked to a guy that was an alderman here in the mid-50s, and what he told me was that second base over there, which of course you can't really see, but where second base would be, the land there was higher than the parking lot here. The Illinois Tollway bought the dirt many years ago, and they hauled it away to construct the Tri-State Tollway, which is about 5 or 6 blocks that way. If you can see those power pylons there, they follow the expressway. So the hill is drained several different ways. A year or two ago, I talked about the abandoned creek, which is over there by the Water Commission water tanks. That's on the channel, the abandoned creek. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you across Butterfield, and I'm going to show you something interesting. I'm on Chatham. Right behind me is Adams. I brought you over here because I wanted you to see the hill. For Illinois, this isn't... For Illinois, it's a big hill. For the rest of the country, they laugh at our concept of hills. So, you can see there's a descent to York Street. And here we're at kind of the summit. And now we start going downhill again. And you can see... And there is a fairly decent hill right here for Illinois. So the water is behind these houses going down what would be the alley, the back property line. I think that's actually fairly close to where it originally was. When the construction of these houses happened, I'm sure they massaged the creek a little bit to keep it right there at the property line. So we're at Butterfield. And right over here where that first trash can is, that's where the creek used to cross Butterfield. And then when it came over here, jackass, when it came over here, according to which map you read, the old topographical maps, it either kind of angled that way down towards the hospital and Roosevelt Road, or it kind of paralleled Butterfield all the way out to about Cedar and then hooked down to the south. So the one creek line would go through and then go over to York Street that way. And while we're down here, I'm going to show you the flood trench. No water down there today. I'm kind of surprised. I would thought this thing would be brimming over. Historically, this is the low spot. This has always been kind of the woods or the trails. This was prime beer drinking area in the old days. It was kind of a fold in the natural ground. And then, coming into the 80s, the city of Elmhurst started developing it for a flood trench. And I believe after the 2006 flood, they deepened it and widened it. Let's get a closer look. Okay, here's the flood trench still. There's some pumps and stuff over here. On the other side of this trench is the unincorporated neighborhood called Yorkfield, and that's where the community center used to be many years ago. And then as you come down here towards this bend, where these houses are, the larger houses kind of behind this mini copse of trees, that's where old Yorkfield School used to be. I attended Yorkfield School many years ago, and in the old days there was a giant open ditch that followed the street more or less here, and then there was a bridge to cross the ditch. At Cedar and Fern is the back side of the old Essig house. The Essig family built this house about 1868. I remember it when it was totally alone up here on the hill and there was nothing else around here. Now, what is interesting about this neighborhood here and this section here is that we've had reports that back in the early 1930s, when there was I think it was the World's Fair in Chicago, the Century of Progress was like 1933. When they did the landscaping in the city, they needed to go out to the burbs to get black dirt. And when you look at the aerial photos from 1938, pretty much this block here is where I think they harvested the dirt. Okay, we're coming out on Cedar. The problem with the east-west hypothetical branch of this creek is that it's really hard to discern from the old maps, etc., from where it came across. I think it was pretty much right through here. For the most part, Yorkfield has not been disturbed. The ground contours, the hills, follow the natural lines. By the way, you'll notice that there's ditches here. This is the unincorporated area. A lot of water in the ditches. Right over here is the front side of where old Yorkfield School used to be. Talking to retired staff from Yorkfield School, I found out that they would be teased by their fellow school administrators, teachers, because the neighborhood here was referred to as the swamps. The branch that would have gone towards the county line, that kind of dips down gradually to Roosevelt Road. I'm not going to show you that. At the very beginning of this film, when I was on Roosevelt, that was pretty much right where it came through. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to take you down in front of the hospital buildings and show you where it went through. Right here, about where the bank is the low spot. There's another low spot a little further down there, but all the maps show that it crossed here. So coming up on the right is the Center for Health. It's some sort of, obviously, a health facility. Story when it got built. When they built this building, it'll be the one closest to the street as we come by. They didn't do the soil testing properly, and after the building was completely constructed, they had to rebuild the basement. I believe 80% of the basement walls were taken out and rebuilt while the building was operational. So we're coming down here to what they call Brush Hill Road. So the other end of the creek would have come out that way, and then we had the branch we're following came this way. Notice the water ponds, the flood ponds. If you ever have one of those 6-inch rains in 2 hours, stay away from Roosevelt Road. I have some videos showing the flooding on this very ramp. Right here in the woods, this is the deep spot for the original ancient swamp. I have a video called The Great Elmhurst Swamp. You can look that up and you can learn some more information about the extent of that huge swamp. Now, in the old days, there was a car dealership right over here. I always remembered it as being paved over, but it's also lowland here. But once you cross Euclid, right in here where the old folks' home is, and then some of these other houses, this was all swamps. Here's another flood pond here. A lot of swamps, a lot of low areas, cattails and stuff like that. So that creek actually came out onto about Roosevelt here, and then it followed the low areas, and we're coming up on Salt Creek. The car ahead of me is just crossing the creek now. Poor old Salt Creek has been moved so many times that this is not the natural trench. The natural trench, it's swung to the east, it's swung to the west. So here's the creek. All right, let's go to another scene. I'm back on Butterfield and I'm passing Timothy Christian High School. I'm eastbound crossing Prospect. I wanted to point out that the land over here for the most part was all lowland and considered swamp. the flood of '87 came out all the way to Bryan Street. Didn't submerge the school or anything like that, but the portion of street that I just crossed had 4 to 6 inches of water, and when you went downhill on some of these streets, there was more water. So I'm going to give you one last view of Butterfield Hill. I'm going to go up the hill crest. So I'm crossing York Street, Butterfield Road going east. And this first dip here, you can see the low spot right here. This is where Yorkfield Creek crossed Butterfield. Then this hill up here, the hill has also been altered. I believe it was a much sharper rise, 150 years ago. And during the road construction, they've kind of fixed it. If you look at the embankment over here to the left, that's the natural level of where we are right now. There's that old house from 1868. And we're coming up on the high spot here. This is Cedar here, and then the next street after Cedar, coming up here, is Hillcrest. I don't know if you can see the little bit of a rise here, but this is the 706 feet above sea level. Well, I'm going to wrap this up. You know, it's kind of something that was here once. It's gone. It's not all that significant. But if you happen to live in the neighborhood and you don't know anything about where is all the water coming from, well, now you know. That's the water tank for the county. And I'm going south on, what is this, Cadwell? And this general area here was drained by what I call the abandoned creek. Again, I would encourage you to look up that video, because that is a truly strange one. With all the construction in the area, the landforms were radically changed. So I'd like to thank you for tuning in. Thank you for viewing. If you got questions about the history of the area, just go ahead and post something in the comment thread, and I'll be talking to you. And we're following the hill here. By the way, this ridge here, when we come down to the low spot, I was telling you about the branch of the creek that basically went south from here. It would have been guided by this hill here. And straight ahead is where old Yorkfield School used to be. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in.